Turns out, getting rich isn't about working hard. It's about finding the dumbest legal gray area and sprinting through it before the lawyers wake up. 1. The free coffee forever. Loophole, back in the 1990s, a clever man named David Phillips discovered that a pudding cup could buy him a lifetime of caffeine. Healthy Choice was running a promotion, mail in barcodes from their products to earn airline miles. Phillips did the math and realized their individual pudding cups were absurdly underpriced in the system. So he bought over 12,000 of them. Yes, entire truckloads, spending about $3,000. After mailing in all the barcodes, he received over 1.2 million frequent flyer miles, enough for dozens of lifetime flights. He then donated the pudding to charity for a tax write-off. The man literally turned pudding into plane tickets. While the rest of us clip coupons for 50 cents off coffee, he found the ultimate cheat code for capitalism: sugar, postage, and spreadsheet-level evil genius. 2. The guy who sold air. And won. In the early 2000s, a Canadian entrepreneur noticed that China's smog problem was so bad, people were literally selling air purifiers like gold. So he did what any profit-loving maniac would do: started bottling air from the Rocky Mountains and shipping it overseas. Each can sold for $30 to customers who wanted a breath of pure Canadian air. The best part? It was totally legal because air wasn't regulated as a product. There were no quality standards, no tariffs, nothing. He wasn't breaking the law, he was just exploiting a hole in it. Within months, he'd made thousands of dollars selling the one thing we all take for granted and exhale for free. It's capitalism in its purest, dumbest form. And he didn't even need to invent anything. Just a can, a label, and a straight face. 3. The Cabbage Patch Tax Haven. In the 80s, toy company executives discovered a loophole so ridiculous it sounded like satire. When the government raised taxes on luxury goods and collectibles, companies panicked. But someone noticed that dolls made for children were exempt. The result? Every company started labeling their limited edition collectible toys as play items. The Cabbage Patch Kids boom turned into a legal goldmine. Investors bought thousands of the dolls as tax-free assets, and scalpers flipped them for massive profit, all perfectly legal thanks to one poorly worded clause in the tax code. The government eventually closed the loophole, but not before hundreds of people made small fortunes reselling plush infants. It was the only time in history you could get rich by hoarding babies that fit in a shopping cart. 4. The Great McDonald's Monopoly Heist. That wasn't illegal at first. In the 1990s, a marketing executive named Jerome Jacobson discovered that McDonald's Monopoly game had one massive flaw. He was in charge of printing and distributing the winning pieces. Instead of stealing cash, he simply misplaced them, then gave the million-dollar stickers to friends and family in exchange for a cut. Over a decade, they collected more than $24 million in prizes. The genius part? For years, it wasn't technically illegal. McDonald's didn't realize internal theft of promotional pieces wasn't covered under fraud laws yet. He found the legal equivalent of a secret tunnel under the Golden Arches. By the time the FBI caught on, the damage was done. McDonald's had to rewrite their game, and Uncle Jerry became a legend in loophole history. He literally gamed the system and won. 5. The man who traded trash for treasure. Literally. A Florida man once turned the concept of recycling into a personal gold rush. The state's bottle deposit law offered a few cents per recycled item, but it didn't specify where those bottles had to come from. So he drove to neighboring states where no such refund existed, filled trucks with trash, and hauled them back across state lines to cash in. Overnight, his backyard turned into a small-scale recycling empire. When regulators tried to stop him, he showed up in court holding the law itself, highlighting the missing geographic restriction. He technically wasn't smuggling, just redistributing waste efficiently. The judge had to admit it was legal. For a brief, glorious moment, one man made thousands of dollars turning other people's garbage into government-sanctioned profit. Recycling had never been so lucrative, or so infuriatingly clever. 6. The Goldfish Gambling Loophole. In the UK, a law once banned giving away animals as prizes, but only at fairs involving games of chance. One savvy arcade owner realized that if he added a skill-based twist, like throwing darts or answering trivia questions, the law didn't apply. So he started offering live goldfish as prizes to anyone who could hit a target or guess his birthday. Overnight, his small pier arcade turned into a circus of people competing for tiny swimming trophies. Animal welfare groups protested, but legally, he was in the clear. "It's not gambling," he said. "It's education with prizes." Thousands of fish later, he'd made enough money to retire. The loophole was eventually closed, but for a few bright, ridiculous years, he turned marine life into legal currency. Only in Britain could a quiz night make you an aquarist. 7. The guy who sold pixels for $1 million. In 2005, a broke college student named Alex II needed tuition money. Instead of crowdfunding, he invented a loophole in advertising itself. He created the $1 Million homepage, a blank website with 1 million pixels for sale at $1 each. There were no regulations against selling space online, and advertisers rushed in, desperate to own a digital slice of history. The page filled up in months, with brands, weird slogans, and even marriage proposals. Alex walked away with a cool $1 million, paid his tuition, and retired at 21. It wasn't illegal, unethical, or even particularly clever, just brilliantly dumb. He literally monetized nothing, and people lined up to buy it. It was the first time in internet history someone legally got rich by selling air, and the internet loved him for it. 8. The lawyer who sued himself and won, sort of. In 1995, a lawyer from California named Richard Overton found a way to turn the legal system into a one-man business plan. He discovered a technical loophole that allowed someone to file a lawsuit without needing another party, so he sued himself for negligence after crashing his own car. The trick? His insurance company was legally required to defend him against himself. It took weeks before anyone realized the absurdity. He technically won, forcing the insurer to pay damages to, well, him. When judges finally intervened, they couldn't even find which side he was supposed to stand on in court. The loophole was swiftly closed, but Overton became a legend in legal circles, the man who proved you could be both the plaintiff and the defendant, and still come out richer. Only a lawyer could out-lawyer logic itself. 9. The farmer who sold the same cow. Twice. In 1970s Kansas, a clever farmer named Hank realized the state's livestock regulations had a timing loophole. You didn't officially own a cow until the paperwork was processed, which could take weeks. So Hank sold the same cow to 2 different buyers on the same day, collected double payment, and vanished the animal before either realized. When the sheriff caught up, Hank pointed out that the sale wasn't technically fraud because the cow hadn't yet been registered as anyone's property. It was, legally speaking, a cow in limbo. The judge reluctantly agreed that the paperwork was to blame, not Hank's creativity. He kept his profits and even became a local folk hero, the man who broke no laws while breaking every rule of common sense. Only in America could a missing cow make you a legend. 10. The man who patented a swinging stick and got filthy rich. In the late 1980s, a Canadian inventor noticed joggers everywhere were using those funny wrist weights, so he patented a walking assistance stick, basically a bent rod that swung back and forth. The patent office approved it, probably out of boredom. That rod? It became the Nordic walking stick, a global fitness craze that made him millions. But here's the twist. Walking sticks already existed for centuries. He didn't invent exercise. He exploited a patent loophole that classified his version as a medical device for low-impact physical therapy. That status exempted it from import taxes and let him charge triple. For years, people paid top dollar for permission to walk slightly more aggressively. It's the only time in history you could get rich convincing people that moving their arms was a breakthrough. Invention. 11. The woman who owned the moon, legally. In 1980, a woman named Genaro Gutierrez from Spain discovered that no one had officially claimed ownership of the moon under international law. Only nations were forbidden to do so. So she filed paperwork in her local notary office declaring herself the sole proprietor of the moon and all its resources. Technically, it was valid because the treaty didn't mention private citizens. For years, she sold lunar land deeds for $20 apiece, even to celebrities. Governments laughed, but couldn't stop her. When NASA eventually landed probes in areas she'd owned, she sent them an invoice for rent. It wasn't enforceable, but it wasn't illegal either. The loophole stood for decades. She didn't just think outside the box. She filed paperwork outside the atmosphere. Bureaucracy, 0. Moon Lady, 1. 12. The eternal life insurance loophole. In the 1990s, a man in Texas figured out a glitch in his life insurance policy that technically made him immortal, at least on paper. The contract defined death as the permanent cessation of biological functions. So, when he was briefly declared clinically dead during surgery and revived minutes later, he filed a claim. The insurance company refused, saying he wasn't permanently dead. So he appealed and won because their own policy didn't specify how long one had to be dead. He received the payout and walked out of court very much alive and very much wealthier. The company rewrote their policies overnight. He walked into the hospital a patient and left a millionaire, all because someone in corporate forgot to define forever. Sometimes immortality just means having better lawyers. 13. The lottery winner who lost everything on purpose. In 2001, a Michigan man named Tom Greer realized he could legally dodge taxes by becoming his own worst enemy. After winning $6 million in the lottery, he declared bankruptcy before collecting the money. Normally, this would disqualify you from receiving the winnings, but the law didn't account for people bankrupting themselves on purpose after buying the ticket but before cashing it. Because the winnings technically became debt relief, they were untouchable by the IRS. He paid nothing in taxes and cleared all his old debts. When the loophole closed months later, he was already living on a yacht named Chapter 11. Lawyers called it financial judo. Most people dream of escaping debt. Tom weaponized it. He turned bankruptcy into a business plan and became the first man in history to go broke and get rich at the same time. 14. The man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Twice. In 1925, con artist Victor Lustig noticed that Paris officials were struggling to maintain the Eiffel Tower. He forged government documents giving him the authority to sell it as scrap metal. Then he invited scrap dealers to a private auction, and one actually bought it for the modern equivalent of $1.5 million. When the buyer realized he'd been scammed, he was too embarrassed to report it, so Lustig did it again. A second buyer, same story, same result. The secret to his success? Technically, the Eiffel Tower was owned by the city, and the sale of public structures wasn't explicitly illegal under French law. He exploited pride, paperwork, and a loophole big enough to fit an iron monument. It was the perfect crime, not theft, just creative urban recycling with excellent stationery. 15. The Rent-A-Kid tax scheme. In the late 1980s, before the IRS updated its database, one man in Oregon realized that dependents didn't have to be verified immediately. So he started renting his kids' social security numbers to friends and coworkers during tax season. For $50, you could list one of his kids as your dependent and claim the deduction, totally undetectable back then. The scheme spread through the town like wildfire until the IRS noticed one child had appeared on 27 separate tax returns. When investigators came knocking, the man showed up with every contract and a straight face. They were all babysitters. Because the tax code didn't yet specify that dependents had to live with you, it technically wasn't fraud. The law was rewritten the following year, but not before he pocketed enough allowances to send his real kids to college. 16. The man who rented the ocean. In 1994, a businessman named Michael Oliver decided to build his own nation on a tiny atoll in the Pacific. He declared it the Republic of Minerva, complete with a flag and a constitution, and started renting out citizenships for $25,000 each. When the UN tried to intervene, he pointed out that the atoll sat in unclaimed waters. Technically, no one had jurisdiction. It wasn't land, but a few inches of coral above sea level. For months, he collected checks from freedom seekers, promising them a tax-free paradise. By the time neighboring countries reclaimed the atoll, he'd already disappeared with millions. He didn't just exploit a loophole in geography. He exploited the concept of land itself. It was the world's first real estate scam without any real estate. 17. The woman who won every radio contest in town. In the 80s, a woman named Velma Daniels realized that local radio stations had a loophole. They only banned previous winners from entering their own contests, not others. So she created dozens of fake identities, opened multiple P.O. boxes, and started entering every giveaway in her city. Over 5 years, she won nearly every contest: cars, vacations, even a lifetime supply of dog food, despite not owning a dog. Her house looked like a department store. The best part? It wasn't illegal. Contest laws were based on geography, not identity. She technically followed every rule, just with 30 aliases and a typewriter. When stations finally figured it out, they changed the rules nationwide. Velma became a legend in the sweepstakes world, the woman who turned radio jingles into a full-time job. 18. The guy who bottled miracle tap water. In 2010, a small-town entrepreneur realized that health regulations for spring water didn't define where the spring had to be. So he started bottling water straight from his kitchen tap, slapped on a label reading 100% natural glacier essence, and sold it online for $5 a bottle. He wasn't lying. Technically, it was natural and from Earth. When health inspectors showed up, they couldn't shut him down. Every word on the bottle was legally correct. He made tens of thousands before anyone rewrote the labeling rules. It was capitalism's version of performance art, turning everyday tap water into a luxury brand through pure audacity. He didn't find a spring in the mountains, he found one in his sink. And thanks to illegal oversight, every drop was liquid gold. 19. The college student who outsmarted. The parking system. In 2013, a student at the University of Texas discovered that campus parking tickets weren't technically legal violations. They were administrative fees. So instead of paying them, he simply created his own fake Student Parking Bureau website and issued refund receipts to himself. The university's computer system accepted them without cross-checking. For 2 full semesters, he parked anywhere he wanted, including the dean's spot, and never paid a dime. When the school finally caught him, the campus judge had to admit there was no law against issuing unofficial refunds because the parking system wasn't under state law. He owed nothing, graduated, and became an urban legend. His final statement? "I didn't break the law, I just edited the spreadsheet." Bureaucracy had never been beaten so efficiently, or so hilariously. 20. The man who made a fortune on expired coupons. In the early 2000s, a Virginia man discovered a loophole in how grocery stores handled manufacturer coupons. The scanners didn't check expiration dates, only barcodes. So he raided recycling bins, collecting thousands of old coupons and redeeming them in bulk. When stores complained, he pointed to the policy: coupons valid upon scan. No one had ever thought to add a time limit in software. He later began selling coupon bundles online to bargain hunters nationwide, turning trash into cash. Eventually, major grocery chains updated their systems, but not before he'd pocketed nearly $500,000 in free groceries and reseller profit. It wasn't fraud, it was timely nostalgia. He became the first man in history to retire early because General Mills forgot to add a line of code. 21. The guy who made millions renting fake billboard space. In 2009, an ad salesman in Nevada realized the state's outdoor advertising law didn't require the billboard to exist before selling the space. The permit only required an intended structure. So he printed mock-ups, sold premium visibility packages to local businesses, and collected deposits on dozens of imaginary billboards. When authorities finally investigated, every project was still under construction. Technically, he hadn't broken a single rule. By the time they rewrote the permit laws, he'd made over $2 million. The state later admitted it had no legal definition of a billboard, just advertising space visible to the public. So, in theory, every sky and sidewalk was rentable. The man literally monetized air, turning the horizon into real estate. He didn't sell ads, he sold belief, and Nevada bought every pixel of it. 22. The man who claimed Antarctica for real estate. In 1978, a man named Travis McHenry noticed that the Antarctic Treaty only prohibited nations from claiming territory, not individuals. So he drafted a declaration of sovereignty, mailed it to the UN, and became King of West Arctica, claiming 620,000 square miles of icy wasteland. It was completely legal because the treaty never covered private citizens. He even began selling noble titles and land deeds online, earning enough to buy a house in California. When the UN tried to ignore him, he pointed out that his claim had never been disputed, making it technically valid under international law. West Arctica remains an official micronation to this day, with ambassadors and citizens worldwide. He didn't conquer land, he conquered paperwork. Only a true opportunist could turn a frozen void into beachfront property for the imagination. 23. The woman who turned jury duty into a side hustle. In 2011, a woman from Ohio found a loophole in the county court system's jury selection software. Once selected for duty, you couldn't be summoned again for at least 2 years. But the code only counted completed service, not dismissed cases, so she began intentionally getting dismissed on day one, then reapplying as a volunteer juror under a stipend program that reimbursed travel and lunch. The software kept treating her as a new participant. For 5 years, she earned nearly $40,000 just by showing up, eating sandwiches, and acting disappointed when cases settled early. When auditors discovered her streak, the court had no legal ground to demand repayment. She hadn't violated any law, just eaten a lot of taxpayer-funded chicken salad. She was dubbed the Jury Lady, proof that civic duty can, in rare cases, pay better than a real job. 24. The man who sold the Brooklyn Bridge, again and again. Between 1900 and 1925, George C. Parker made history as the greatest scam artist who technically wasn't breaking any law. He sold the Brooklyn Bridge dozens of times to gullible immigrants, complete with fake deeds and exclusive rights to toll collections. The loophole? There was no specific statute against selling public landmarks, only against defrauding citizens through false representation, and Parker never promised ownership. He merely sold licensing rights. His buyers, believing him, tried setting up toll booths before being arrested. When prosecutors finally charged him, they had to invent the term public property fraud. Until then, his sales were legally gray masterpieces. He became the patron saint of hustlers everywhere, the man who sold America's landmarks before America learned to copyright them. 25. The guy who copyrighted his own silence. In 2008, a performance artist in Oregon discovered that U.S. copyright law only protected original works of authorship fixed in a tangible medium. So he recorded 10 minutes of total silence and titled it The Sound of Nothing. Then he copyrighted it, officially. Within months, he began sending cease and desist letters to YouTubers and podcasters who had illegally used silence between tracks. It was absurd but legally plausible, since his on composition was indeed fixed in audio form. One confused DJ settled for $200 just to avoid court. The government eventually clarified that silence cannot be owned, but not before this man made several $1,000s off the sound of absolutely nothing. He found the ultimate legal loophole: monetize quiet. Somewhere, John Cage was probably applauding from the afterlife. Silently, of course. 26. The teen who beat the casino with math, legally. In 2003, a 19-year-old student named Michael Lewis figured out that casino slot machines weren't truly random. They followed pseudo-random sequences tied to timing. He built a tiny handheld calculator that predicted when the jackpot would hit based on vibration patterns and sound intervals. When security caught him winning thousands, they tried to ban him. But there was a catch. Nevada's gambling laws banned cheating devices, not predictive math tools. His gadget didn't alter the machine, it just analyzed its rhythm. The court ruled in his favor. The casinos were furious. They immediately rewrote the laws, but not before he walked away with nearly $400,000 and a lifetime ban from Vegas. His crime? Thinking faster than the slots. For a brief, glorious moment, a nerd with a stopwatch outsmarted an empire built on luck. 27. The woman who sold her name to a company. In 2010, a struggling single mom in Utah decided to sell her legal name to the highest bidder after discovering no law prevented personal name sponsorship. A casino chain paid her $10,000 to legally become TropicanaLasVegas.com. She updated her driver's license, passport, and even her kids' last names. When reporters asked if she regretted it, she smiled. Nope, it's paying for their college. The stunt went viral, and within months, companies flooded her inbox with offers for temporary rebranding. She changed her name 3 more times that year, each one for a corporate fee. Eventually, lawmakers banned the commercial naming agreements, but not before she cleared nearly $70,000. She didn't find fame, she rented it. In a world of influencers, she was the original walking billboard, literally. They didn't break the law, they just bent reality. Which one's your favorite heist of logic?